we're going to start with chapter 12. We're looking at 12 today, next Tuesday, chapter 8 after that, and then our first test. But we're going to get started with 12. And as you notice in the course, we went out of order. We jumped to 12, and then we go back and do 8, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15. And I like to get this GUI stuff in here because a lot of you know I like the output to be user-friendly. I like the GUIs. The console, I think, is great. That's that little box along the bottom where you see your error message and so forth. That's great, but that's more for the programmer. That's nice and quick and to go from there. But I want you to start prepping to get ready for you to sell a product, to you to give it to a user and they go, oh, I like this program. It looks pretty and so forth. So we're going to get into chapter 12. We're going to hit section 12.1 today. And we're going to just keep rolling in 12 until we get there. So what is a GUI? It's where the user is able to enter things kind of in any order they want. And what we're going to jump to is a little more advanced than a message dialog box. We're going to be able to, the user can enter numbers. The user could quickly edit things that are entered. And they're not like down in the console or with a message box where you ask a question, you post an answer. You ask a question, you post an answer, put an answer in. You know, so this is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to make everything look a lot nicer. An event-driven program, just some quick terminology. Event-driven program is one that you normally do. We type things in and it goes. A batch program is one you say go and output spits out. Sort of like the very last program a lot of you wrote for me in 121. You had to read in a big data file and do a whole bunch of stuff to it, and you displayed information, and the user didn't have to do anything except go. Hit go and get it started, whatever that was. And that's what, you know, big companies do. They don't have a lot of user input. They have the programs to do all kinds of stuff. So we're going to get into, as I said, this Java FX. And it's what we're going to use GUIs. Before this, and if you don't have edition 7 for your book, you're in trouble because the 6th edition doesn't use Java FX. It uses something else, but we're using Java FX. I just got the next edition of the book. I think it still uses Java FX, which is good. So the first thing is when we get ready to make our GUI, make this layout look nice and pretty, make it look like something down here at the bottom of the page, which a lot of you have seen, we need to start with the basics of what we put on here. Visual Basic was a course that is kind of neat because, and we don't even offer it anymore. Everybody takes other courses, but in Visual Basic, you had to create the GUI first. Once the GUIs were created, then you would click and it would allow you to start writing the code for the program. So your output was what was determined, how you want this to look, and then you wrote the program. And of course, BASIC is beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. It's a simpler language that became real universal early on. So the first thing we need to take a look at is these controls. What am I going to put on my output? And the controls are simple things, and you've seen these names before, but things like labels, text fields, and buttons. Well, what's a label? Hours worked. That's a label. What's a button? Calculate. What's a text field? A place where I can enter numbers. And we'll see eventually, we can do a lot of different things with text fields. We can put numbers in to start ahead of time if we want. We can make them editable or non-editable and so forth. So we have this area we'd like to create. Now, if you were doing it, yes.
So basically what you're saying, this is kind of like a specialized dialog box in a way.
Yes, we're going to do a specialized output. Yep, it's going to look nicer than just being able to enter one thing. Okay, got that? Good. Moving on. Now, we're going to get these controls. And if you read through the book, which again, one of the things I learned in grad school is if I had the time, I would skim ahead because it always helped me understand the material. Part of the reason I have you do code listings are because you get a pretty good idea coming in and you get all the blanks filled in, and then you get to be able to practice and work with it. But one of the things that goes on in Java FX is they talk about it looking like it's a theater, right? And in front of you, you have a stage, and on the stage, you may have a bunch of scenes. So we're going to take these controls and we're going to put them in the scenes, create a bunch of scenes, and then we're going to add the scenes to the stage. And you're kind of thinking like, okay, what the heck does that mean? All right, I have a note. Take a look at code listing 12.1. And hopefully a bunch of you have typed this up. I know 6 out of 19 of you have already submitted it, but you start to take a look at lines 1 and 2, 2 new imports, Java FX application. Again, this is from the package application, and I want the class. And hopefully remembering back to 121, you have an idea of what a class is. Okay. I'm going to import also from Java FX stage and then a stage class. So if you don't have that folder in there, like I was showing, you're not going to be able to get these to run. All right, so I see something that looks almost new until I remind you. As I write this program, I see an extends application. Well, we haven't covered that yet, but we sort of have seen something like that before, haven't we? Wasn't there something after this that we've included way back when?
It was a file IO exception.
Yeah, file. So we're going to learn exactly what that means this semester. But in order to run these Java FX programs, we need to have that line included. Now, what's going to happen here? And again, as we go through the semester, all of this is going to make sense. I have a main, and in my main, all I do is, so we're going to learn what extends application means. That means there's a class written, and we're going to take their files, and one of the methods that I take is this launch args. And this guy right here is so powerful. That's all we put in the main. Boom. That's it. We put it in the main. And it's something that's called an inherited method. All right, so we come into the main and, okay, so when I do this launch arg, it calls this start method. It's information tucked away in here. We don't need to see it. Right now, we just need to understand we got some stuff going with this extends. I'm going to call launch args. It's a method from application. So application, again, is a class. There's a method in there called launch. And this is how we get our Java FX running. We're going to come in and I'm going to see my start method. And everything we're going to do is inside of the start method. I have the start method and I am bringing in a data type stage, and I'm going to call it primary stage. Okay. So there's a single thing in the signature here. I come in and I say, okay, I'm going to work with primary stage. I'm going to set the title, boom. Once I do that, I call a method on this object. The object is called primary stage. I'm going to call the method show, and boom, that's what we get. I get that with the title that I put on it, my first GUI application. So that's my stage. All the world is a, come on. All the world, stage, thank you. Thank you. All the world's a stage. Maybe not in this class, but all the world's a stage. Okay, so as I said earlier, now you can see we're starting section 12.3. We need to create scenes to put on our stage. We may have one scene, we may have 3 scenes. So we're going to create these scenes and stick them on our stage. What is a scene? A scene is going to be a bunch of these controls that we talked about earlier. Excuse me, labels and text boxes and what was the third one? Buttons. Okay, so we're going to put those on. So there are steps, and I try to keep 4 steps in mind in my head. The 4 steps are, first thing I need to do is create the control. Okay, I want to have 2 labels and 1 text box and 1 button. That's it. I know what I want to put on there. I create a layout. Now we're going to look at a couple simple layouts today. And one of them is a horizontal layout where when I put them on, they go on left to right. One of them is a vertical layout where I put them on and they go up and down. So I'm going to create a layout and put the controls on it. Then I have to make a scene. I'm not going to make a scene. I'm going to create a scene and put that layout on the scene, and then finally add all of my scenes to the stage. All right, so I have a note now, code listing 12.2. Let's see what we have going on here. Hello, world. Hello, world. Let's see what I have. I have, there's application and stage. There's my first 2. I'm good and I'm happy with those. Now I'm going to start working with the scene. So from Java FX, I need to get the scene class. And I'm also going to bring in my first layout, which is a horizontal box, which means everything's going to be, when I add the controls, they're going to be added horizontally from left to right. And the only control I'm bringing in is a label. And I'm going to be looking at a bunch of controls as we go. So this import's going to get larger and larger and larger, because I'm just going to keep using more and more classes to do things. Boom. There's my main. Nothing exciting. Extends application. Repetition, right? We keep saying extends application, extends application. And a lot of you have learned that these bigger programs, cut and paste. Don't start them from scratch. Don't start them from scratch. All right, so let's see what's going on over in my start method. Okay, I start out, boom, step 1. What controls do I want? I have 1. It's just a label, hello world. I need to instantiate a new object of the label class. Yeah, this is all that chapter 6 from CPS 121, all the lingo. I'm creating another object called HBox, and it looks like I'm sending in, so I can send parameters in, and the order will matter. I can send 1 or multiple ones. So I created that object. So that class is doing all the work for me. I now create a scene and add this. So now I'm just creating one object after another. Well, that sounds like good news for object-oriented programming. Then I come down here and I'm going to take that stage, primary stage that was down in my parameter list. Remember, I have an object called primary stage of the stage class, and I'm going to take that primary stage. I'm going to call the method set scene. I'm going to bring in a variable that is an object that is of type scene. And then boom, once I get that on my scene, on my stage, excuse me, I give my stage a title and I show my stage. Pow-pow. Whew. That's a lot of work to do very little. But once you have a lot of this done, you only have to add small things to make the program bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, this is where I say when you're doing a program, get this much done and save it. Okay, what labels do I need to add next? Boom, keep saving it and uploading it, better and better versions. Instead of typing the whole thing in and it just doesn't work. 12.3 gets a little bit snazzier because I'm now coming in and I have a new one. right? We didn't have this line 6 before. Dot geometry, dot position, or pause. Boom, main still is the main. I come in, there's number 1, create my controls. I only have one of them. Here's number 2. I have my horizontal box where I bring that in. Here's number 3. And as you can see, thank you very much, documentation. We're going to be able to set a predefined size for our H box instead of the default, whatever that is. And we're also going to center our H box, calling a method called alignment. We want to be able to center it. So a little bit nicer than the last one, we get something that looks like hello world. Questions? Whew. That's me doing a lot of talking, you doing a lot of listening. As I said, I'm hoping that code listings were typed in and you were able to get a preview of what we were covering today. Okay, so for some reason, all of a sudden, instead of really sticking with what we were doing and, you know, instead of just having one label in there, we'd be adding all kind of stuff. For some reason, the author jumps to displaying images. So in code listing 12.4, you see we have 2 new import statements. And hopefully as you were typing them in, you know, again, repetition, application, stage, scene, layout. We're going to do another horizontal box. Scene, image, scene, image view. Well, I need to add those 2 things and let's see what's going on. I come down and I am creating an image object. Okay, I'm calling it image, lowercase I, and I'm sending in hot air balloon, which you could have found any JPEG and put in there. I am now going to create an image object. So let's see, I took this first one and I created the image, and now I have to create a second one to get that image ready to view. So these 2 sort of tie in and go hand to hand. So if I'm going to publish images, I need to use both of those classes. I want it to be horizontal, and if you took a picture and you had typed in 12.4, boom, you could get it to display. And as we go through, you know, we're going to do a pizza program eventually, and people are going to have pictures of pepperoni pizza in there, and they're going to have subs and all kind of pictures in their programs. Now I want pepperoni pizza. Setting the size of an image. We were just talking about how we could set the size of hello world to a predefined size. We can do that with images as well. All right, now let's get into something good. Tell me something. Any questions so far? Again, it's me doing a lot of talking. I've been going for about 20 minutes here. I'm going to get you to type something in a little bit. Start to mess around. Okay. So the first 2, well, we've only worked with one layout container so far, and that was the H box. As I had mentioned before, there's another one called V box for vertical. So as I add things, they will get added vertical. And another one, which we kind of like, is the grid pane. The grid pane. And we're going to get to that in a little bit today. So 12.5, now we start to get into something a little bit better. I'm going to take this and I'm going to do JavaFX, application, stage, scene, boom, boom. All that looks good. But instead of 1 picture, I'm now adding 3 pictures: moon, ship, and sunset. Again, I create the image objects, then I create the image view objects. And we could get into these classes and all of the things that they can do for us, but not things that we really need to get into right now. These are all resized so that they all come out the same size. And I now have, remember I was doing steps: create the objects, do the layout, add the layout to a scene. In this case, we only have one scene. We add it to the stage and we run it and we get 3 pictures. Voila. That's all great and good. Okay. Questions? Again, I know some of you are crying because you didn't get the code listings done ahead of time. I apologize. I put the wrong time in, but more than 6 should have had them done because you've had me before. If I want to do some spacing, the 3 pictures I just looked at on the previous page were side by side by side. One of the things I can do is put a spacing of 10 pixels between, there it is, pixels, Pixar, right? We got all that. 10 pixels between the images, and it would make it look a little bit nicer. Ta-ta-ta. And another thing I could do is add padding, which comes out of this JavaX geometry packet. Okay. And we have a VBox and everything. So what I want you to do now, and before we get into grid pane, I want to go back to code listing 12.3. And in my hello world, okay, 12. Hello world, all this did was print out hello world, and it would have been in a horizontal box. I'm going to put you into groups for about 10 minutes-ish. And what I want you to do is take this program and modify it so that it has everybody in your little group for the breakout room, has everyone's name in it. And I want it to be displayed vertically. And then I want a happy face. So you're going to take 12.3 and edit it. And I want to see Bob, Joe, Harry, Mary. And then I want you to put a happy face in. Notice these are all vertical.
You mean a picture of a happy face, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Got it? And we're not done after this. We're coming back. But I talk too much. I need to keep your attention. So that's what I want you to do. Modify. So hopefully somebody in this group did do 12.3. You can pull it up and share it on your screen. Turn your videos on so that you can look at each other. It's much easier to work. We're going to make rooms of 4 or 5 people. 3 might be too shallow to make sure somebody has it done. And now you know what I want you to do. Get your fingers dirty. Get in there and play around. Ask questions of each other. Bob, Joe, Harry, and Mary. Again. Okay, the last thing we're going to cover is a different layout. You folks, code listing H box, you just practiced a V box, and now we're going to take a look at something called a grid pane layout. This is kind of a cool one. Probably you would use this 95% of the time and the other two very little because it's a nicer layout. We're going to look at other layouts eventually, but this is a kind of a popular one. So what does a grid pane layout do? Well, it helps you lay things out in a grid. And as you start to put things in the grid, it'll fill in the boxes from left to right, top to bottom. So you may decide ahead of time what you want to do with your grid. You had code listing 12.8, and I don't know if you typed this one in or not. Did you? You had 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this might be a little harder to do when I put you back into groups, but you'll be able to get started. And then we can come back and work a little bit more on this if we need to next Tuesday, but hopefully you'll be able to get started. The grid pane layout, I need to make notes of self to change the code listing for next time. Okay, so grid layout, as you can see down here in line 4, Java X scene layout, grid pane. Okay, so grid pane is going to fill it in, sort of like a matrix. So I come up with a bunch of controls, 1, 2, 3, 4, sort of like we've been doing. You know, we're just going to be taking lines out and adding lines a lot with what we're doing. Save as will become really popular. So I have a bunch of controls, label 1, 2, 3, and 4. I create this grid layout. Now I start to take a look at, this guy is kind of important, the way we do it. When I get ready to add to the grid, I'm going to put the label where I want it. Otherwise it will go left to right, but I want to put it where I want it. So I'm going to be able to fill in. Before this edition of the book, before Java FX, it filled it in left to right and it wasn't as nice. That's by default, I think, still when we go to add them. So I'm going to be filling them in. And again, I'm putting in locations, starting at 0, not starting at 1. It's almost like filling in a 2-dimensional array. Okay, my scene, I'm going to do this grid pane 200 by 100 to help with the sizing. And you see down here, it prints out, this is label 1, this is label 2, this is label 3, this is label 4. We're going to make that a whole lot nicer as we go. But right now you can see how it's filling it out. So using a grid pane. Code listing 12.9 is one that you're going to have to do. And you're going to be doing a lot more with grid pane. And you know, you're going to be able to do something like put in 4 pictures in a grid pane. So with this next thing I want you to do, I would have my book available on page 788 with code listing 12.9. And what I want you to do in your group is to write a program. The program is going to display the images of your top 5 fast food restaurants using grid layout. And then beside it, put the names. Try to throw some spacing in, try to throw some padding in. So what's your number 1 restaurant in your group? It might be McDonald's. Number 2 might be Jack in the Box. So you're going to get 5 images and 5 names beside it and fill this in. What do you think about that? Questions?